Hello, family. Welcome back to our Draw Near series. I hope and pray that you are being blessed by growing in your relationship with God through prayer. And I also pray that today will be no different. Let me ask you a question. Think back to when you were in school, elementary school, junior high school, and waiting on someone to pick you up from school. Right? Now, have you ever been one of the last kids to be picked up? Do you remember that feeling? Right? Seeing the cars drive by, but never seeing the car that you're looking for show up. Right? The friends and people that you were talking with getting picked up and leaving one after another. It's a sad situation. Listen, I know it personally. One time I was the last kid. Y'all, it's a sad situation to be brought in by the school officials. Let's try calling your parents one more time. And that same feeling of anxiety and even a little bit of despair can happen to us when it comes to our prayer life. When we've been sitting and waiting on God to answer what he says he would answer, and it's not showing up. And maybe you've been praying about direction. Maybe you've been praying for healing. Maybe you're praying for reconciliation, whatever the case is, things that you kind of know to be God's will, but he is not answering them day after day, week after week, month after month, even year after year. And so you can fall into this place of sadness and be at a place where you're ready to give up. Well, I want you to know that Jesus tells a story to help you and to encourage you to keep praying. Matter of fact, not just to keep praying, but to keep praying no matter what. And it's in Luke's Gospel, Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. And he told them, his disciples, a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused. But afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? I love the fact of this story that Jesus is telling just after talking to his disciples about his return. And you can imagine how things will be for Christians the closer we get to the return of Christ, something we've all been waiting for through the centuries. Bible talks about how things are going to go from bad to worse. And so people are going to be just like we described earlier, that child waiting to get picked up. And just the length of time, it's easy to move to a place of sadness. But Jesus teaches his disciples to pray and to keep on praying. Now, the Bible talks about that we should be people who pray without ceasing. Matter of fact, in 1 Thessalonians 5:17, it says that explicitly, pray without ceasing. Now, to pray without ceasing doesn't mean to pray 24/7. Otherwise, you'd never sleep, right? Pray without ceasing just is a way of just describing an ongoing prayer life, active and regular. A way to kind of understand it is think about the way people use their phones, right? They grab their phone the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning and bring it into the restroom with them. And while they brush their teeth, they're looking at their phone. And as they drive, unfortunately, they glance at their phone. First moment of break, when they get a break at work, looking at the phone. When they get off work, on the phone. And then at night, when you're just going to be up for 30 minutes before going to sleep, you spent 2 hours on your phone. Well, replace that phone with prayer. Matter of fact, a way to kind of apply and to move in this place, why don't you just pray before you grab your phone? Pray before you glance at your phone. And people will say about your prayer life, or you might say about your prayer life, what people would say about you and your phone. You're always on your phone, and you would be praying without ceasing. But Jesus doesn't just tell them to pray all the time. He tells them to pray and to not lose heart. And so what is it that I want you to do? Or what is he teaching us to do? And that's to pray persistently. So it's not just about praying all the time, but also praying when we really don't feel like praying. When the circumstances of life have us thinking that maybe the prayers aren't really going to be answered. Jesus is encouraging his disciples when you're in those moments and when it seems like God's answer is never going to come, you keep praying. And he uses this story of this unrighteous judge. And I love how he talks about the judge, that he neither fears man or respects people. And I want you to think, if you've ever heard of the great commandment, what is it that Jesus communicated is the greatest commandment? It's basically to love God with everything and to love your neighbor as yourself. And what Jesus is putting in this story about this judge is a person who does neither, right? They don't care anything about God and they don't care anything about people. And what that does is it gives us a picture of a judge, a person in authority that has no moral compass and no compassion. And on the other side of this amoral judge, this heartless judge, is a widow. Why a widow? In that culture, in that time frame, she is the picture of weakness. She has no representative. She has no means. And so there's nothing about her that could drive things in her direction. The only thing she has to go on is her persistence. And so we see in this story, her persistence pays off with this amoral judge, this heartless judge. And Jesus does what he did, what we talked about last week. He argues from the lesser to the greater. And he's saying, listen, if persistence can produce things with somebody who doesn't care for God, no morality, and doesn't care anything about you, how much more will it be effective for you going day and night to your Father who loves you, right? The fact that you have a relationship with someone that absolutely has a moral compass, he defines the compass, and someone who loves you to death and life again. And so it's an encouragement to not give up on prayer, to keep praying, even if it has been days, weeks, or years. The Bible lets us know in God's 66-book resume, he can be trusted. Now, I find it interesting, in this story, he talks about that he will give justice. He won't delay over them. I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Now, we need to understand speedily from a divine perspective, right? When it comes to the things that God does, sometimes he uses a microwave, but a lot of times he likes to use a crock pot. God likes to slow cook some blessings. And we can see that through scripture, right? We think about Abraham. Abraham wanted a son, and he asked God for a son, and God said yes. But the son didn't show up for 25 years. And so sometimes it can take a while. But the point is, you can always expect good to come out of that faithfulness. And so God can be trusted. It's the reason you come to God for prayer, and it's the reason you ought to keep coming to God for prayer. And I understand that it can be a long time, and you wonder, why does it take so long? Is it to extend my suffering? No, it's not to extend your suffering. It's to extend your sanctification. There's a development that happens with you. It's either going to increase your walk to be like him or increase your worship of him. But you want to keep praying. You want to keep trusting. And here's what I can promise you, that no matter how long it's been to receive that answer, it will always be worth the wait. I remember years ago here in the Houston area, there was an amusement park called Astroworld. And one of the best rides there was called the Texas Cyclone, this old wooden roller coaster. And everybody loved the Texas Cyclone, and it had a long wait, right? And you'd see that long line before you could get on the ride. But man, once you got on the ride and you had the experience of that first drop, you couldn't wait to get on it again. Matter of fact, if you told your friends, "Hey, man, you need to go ride the Texas Cyclone," how long was the wait? It was only an hour. Only an hour? Listen, before you rode it, that sounded like a long time, but after you experienced the joy of it, it was only an hour. And I want you to know that the greatest things that you are looking for, if it's healing, if it's reconciliation, whatever it is, it will be worth the wait. Now, one of the things Jesus said at the end of that story is, will he find faith when he comes back? And it is basically asking this open-ended question, that while we're seeking him, he's going to be looking for us as well. He's going to be looking that we have been faithful in our prayers. And so you have to answer that question for him. Will he find you faithful? Will you still be praying no matter how long it takes? If you do, I promise you, it will be worth the wait. So don't give up. Don't give out. In other words, don't put a period where God has put a comma. He's still writing the story. So I want to encourage you to continue to draw near.